Princess Lyri's frilled crest flared involuntarily as High Chancellor Voron's proclamation echoed off the emerald-veined walls of the Imperial Audience Chamber. By decree of the Viridian Council, to forge unbreakable bonds against the border threats of the Krell warlords, Princess Lyri shall wed the Terran envoy, Marcus Vale, sealing our alliance with the upstart human worlds. Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles, their scales shimmering in hues of jade and sapphire under the chamber's bioluminescent glow. Lyri forced her frills to settle, her mind racing through the strategic calculus she'd memorized from the archives. Terrans were primitives, barely a century into stellar travel, their worlds a patchwork of squabbling nations. This marriage was a necessity, a ceremonial chain to deter Krell incursions while her empire's fleets repositioned. She would dominate it, as she did every courtly dance. No soft-skinned ape would overshadow the air. The chamber doors parted with a hiss of pressurized air, admitting the human flanked by 2 protocol drones. Marcus Vale moved with unhurried grace, his plain gray envoy's tunic stark against the noble's flowing robes of woven crystal sieve. Tall for his kind, broad-shouldered yet lean, he inclined his head precisely 12 degrees, the exact deference for a crown heir she'd wager from her linguistics drills. His dark eyes met hers without flinching, calm as a still pond. "Envoy Vale," Lyri said, her voice carrying the modulated timbre of command, laced with Galactic Standard's formal inflections. She rose from her dais, circling him slowly to test his poise, her tail flicking in subtle challenge. "You stand before the heart of Viridia. Do you comprehend the weight of this union, or does your fragile species fleet from such entanglements?" A flicker of amusement ghosted his features, gone before her aides could note it. "Princess, I comprehend fully. Terra honors its pacts with resolve, not retreat." His accent was flawless, no translator lag, as if he'd breathed Viridian syntax since birth. Voron cleared his throat scales. "The procession awaits, Highness. Public affirmation will quell the faction whispers." Lyri nodded sharply, suppressing a thrill of the spectacle. The route through the capital's thoroughfares would showcase stability, a queenly gambit from the theory tomes. As they exited the chamber into the open-air causeway, the air hummed with the distant roar of throng chants. Protesters. The isolationist guilds, no doubt, decrying alien dilution of pure Viridian bloodlines. Her lead advisor, Talix, hissed urgently at her elbow. "Highness, reroute through the shielded avenues. The mob numbers in the thousands. Stones already mar the forward scouts' hulls." "No," Lyri snapped, her frills snapping taut. "We proceed. Fear feeds the factions. Resolve starves them." She glanced at Marcus, expecting the human to blanch. He merely adjusted his stance, scanning the horizon with quiet assessment. The procession descended the grand spiral ramp into Lumara's bustling heart, crystal spires piercing the perpetual twilight canopy. Armored sentinels flanked the open hover litter bearing Lyri and her betrothed, their plasma lances humming. Cheers from loyalists mingled with jeers as they entered the market sprawl, till a volley of sonic pellets shattered the air, purled from shadowed alleys. The litter bucked. A guard crumpled, frills smoking from a direct hit. "Shields up!" Thalix bellowed, drones deploying energy bubbles that flickered under the barrage. Lyra gripped the litter's rail, heart thrum accelerating. This was no mere protest. The pellets bore Guildhall markers, laced with paralytic venom, assassins cloaked as rabble. Her mind flashed to strategy sims. Disperse, fortify, counterstrike, but publicly fleeing would fracture the Empire's facade. Marcus moved first, not in panic but precision. He vaulted to the litter's edge, one hand steadying her arm with feather-light contact. Protocol perfect, no presumption. While the other unfurled a slim data slate from his tunic. "Highness, permit me." Before she could retort, he activated it, projecting a holographic cascade of Viridian runes into the air above the litter. Not the crude envoy seals, but the full Rite of Thorns, ancient binding liturgy, intoned in flawless high Viridian, his voice weaving through the chaos like a blade through silk. "By the green veil's embrace, we thorns entwine against the blight. Empire unbroken. Alliance eternal." The words hit like a thunderclap. Protesters faltered, sonic throwers lowering as the hologram bloomed into thorny vines of light, coiling protectively around the litter. It was no mere recitation. He'd modulated the frequencies to resonate with their neural frills, a subtlety even veteran chanters botched. Guild enforcers in the crowd hissed in outrage, then confusion. The rite invoked imperial sanctity, deflating their purest outrage by framing the marriage as sacred continuity, not dilution. Leary's breath caught. How? Terrans had accessed the right texts mere cycles ago. No outsider mastered its tonal harmonics so swiftly. Her own tutors drilled for animus. Yet here he stood, multitasking the projection's calibration amid pelting fire, his free hand subtly directing a drone to flank vaporize an advancing sniper without breaking chant. The mob's fervor cracked. Cheers swelled from the loyal fringes, drowning the jeers. Sentinels pressed forward, herding the disrupted protesters back. Thalix gaped, frills quivering. Impossible. He invoked the veil without error. Marcus deactivated the slate seamlessly, bowing to her. A gesture of commitment, Princess. Your resolve inspired it. She met his gaze, the litter stabilizing as they crested the thoroughfare's end. Arrogance? No. Deference, laced with quiet capability. Her pulse thrummed not just from danger, but the spark of something uncharted. A spouse who matched her step for step, not as pawn, but partner. The procession reached the Unity Plaza unscathed, nobles and commons alike erupting in acclaim. Vorin rushed forward, eyes wide on Marcus. Envoy, that right, your fluency rivals the archpriest's. How did a Terran? Study and practice, Chancellor, Marcus replied evenly. No boast. Your archives are generous. Leary stepped down from the litter, frills held high in triumph. The crowd hushed as she raised her voice, crystal clear. Viridia endures. This union is no weakness, but our shield against shadows. I, Leary, heir of the Green Veil, accept Marcus Vale as consort, by duty, by will, by the thorns that bind us. Applause thundered, faction spies slinking into the throng defeated. She turned to her household aides, voice steel. Prepare the Alliance suites. Integrate Terran protocols by dawn. We fortify, not fracture. Thalix bowed, still glancing warily at Marcus. As you command, Highness. Though, the human's adaptability unnerves me. Leary watched Marcus confer quietly with a sentinel, correcting its lance stance with a murmured tip. Ergonomics, she realized human-derived. Unnerves? It intrigued. This arranged union, meant to be ceremonial, had just become her first forge, not of gold, but of queenship. And in its heat, the Terran proved no fragile ornament. As twilight deepened, casting long shadows over the plaza, a runner approached. Urgent missive from the borders. Krell scouts probing again. Leary's frills tightened. The real tests loomed. But now, with this human at her side, she felt the first stir of true momentum. Marcus's hand moved with deliberate calm across the shimmering accord scroll, his signature a stark human flourish amid the glowing Viridian runes. Princess Leary watched from her dais, the weight of her ceremonial tiara pressing against her brow scales. As ranks of armored guards snapped their tails in unison, their pageantry a thunderous display of empire strength. The air hummed with incense and the low chant of alliance vows, her union to this off-world envoy, sealed not for affection, but to bind Terran aid against the Krell warlords gnawing at the borders. He straightened, bowing low enough to honor her station without groveling, his dark eyes meeting hers for a fraction too long. By duty and honor, I accept, Marcus Vale said through the translator orb, his voice even, betraying no reluctance. Leary's frills flickered involuntarily. Dutiful, yes, but there was a quiet steel in his posture that the court whispers hadn't prepared her for. The envoys from allied houses applauded with synchronized claw claps, but she caught the sidelong glances from Lord Saren's faction, their tails coiled tight with unspoken dissent. The procession swept into the grand reception hall adjacent to the plaza, crystal lanterns igniting as twilight bled across the marble floors. Servitors circulated with nectar vines and spiced orbs, the orchestra's reeds weaving triumphant strains. Leary circulated too, her advisors murmuring protocols at her elbow, but her gaze tracked Marcus as he mingled seamlessly, deferring to nobles asking pointed questions about trade routes that drew surprised nods. He accepted the match out of obligation, he'd said in private audiences, a professional envoy bolstering the alliance, yet he moved like one who'd walked battlefields, not just negotiation chambers. A hush rippled through the hall as Lord Saren strode forward, his emerald robes swirling, flanked by his armored retainers. The rival suitor, barred from her hand by imperial decree, planted himself before the high table, his frills fully flared in crimson challenge. "The Highness," he boomed, voice laced with factional venom. "This union mocks Viridian blood. A soft-skinned Terran for our heir? I challenge the match's honor, in the arena of blades, as tradition demands, gasps echoed. Lyri's tail lashed once, her mind racing through stratagems. Saren's ploy was clear: humiliate the Alliance publicly, rally his border lords against weak foreign ties. She rose, projecting regal calm. Lord Saren, tradition yields to empire need. The accords stand ratified. But he pressed, gesturing to an ornate gift vine on the table. A ceremonial braid from his house, symbolizing fealty. Before security could intervene, a servitor unwound it for display, and the vine's thorns glistened unnaturally, a faint acrid tang cutting the air. Poison, a guard hissed, frills blanching white as they sealed the hall. Panic fluttered, nobles recoiled, tails thrashing. Marcus was there in an instant, not shoving forward but gliding to the guard's side under guise of diplomatic protocol. "Allow me," he murmured to the captain, voice low. Lyri strained to hear over the chaos, her heart's pounding. He didn't touch the vine but crouched, nostrils flaring, eyes tracing the thorn patterns. Neutralizing agent, derived from Krell stingweed, volatile to heat but stabilized by royal nectar residue. He plucked a nearby incense brazier, improvising without pause, fanning precise waves of smoke over the thorns while directing a guard to fetch a containment field. Tilt it 5 degrees left. Expose the base vents first. It'll bind the toxin without residue. The captain hesitated, frills twitching in doubt. A human directing Viridian security? But complied. The thorns dulled to harmless gray in seconds, the poison inert. Murmurs swelled. How did he know? Terran fieldcraft. Impossible for an envoy. Security neutralized the threat fully, hauling away the vine, but Lyri saw the captain's grudging nod to Marcus, tails uncurling in respect. Saran snarled, challenge deflated, and slunk back amid jeers. Lyri seized the moment, her voice cutting clear. Palace protocols demand review. Confidential. Immediate. Captain, audit all gifts and access logs. As calm returned, she turned to Marcus, pulse quickening at his unassuming retreat. Envoy Vale, for my official duties amid these threats, I request your private escort. Your insights proved timely. He inclined his head, no boast in his tone. An honor to serve, Highness. Later, in the quiet of her household chambers, framed by vine-woven walls and starlit balconies, Lyri dismissed her maids, leaving her alone with Marcus for the first true exchange. He stood by the guard roster hologram, awaiting orders, his frame relaxed yet alert. You defer to my ceremonial authority, as accords require, she said, frills easing as she keyed him into the roster herself. Proximity granted, a step beyond protocol. His presence felt less like obligation now, more like ballast against the court's shadows. Marcus nodded, eyes tracing the roster without presumption. Viridian Guard traditions are precise. I'll adapt to support, not supplant. A faint smile touched his lips, warm, not sly. Your quick command quelled the hall, strengthened poise. Her scales warmed unexpectedly, a rare flutter beneath the arrogance she'd armored herself with. Sheltered air no longer content with theory, this human glimpsed her potential without patronizing. Stay close then, threats circled tighter. By dawn's glow, Lyri summoned her advisors to the war chamber, the runner's missive from the plaza now unrolled before them. Krell scouts probing deeper, time to exploit wedding chaos. Monitor every faction's rhetoric, she ordered, voice steady with newfound steel. Saran's poison was no coincidence. Chart alliances, intercept whispers. I'll address the public myself. Reassure the Empire our union fortifies us. Her chief advisor's frills flared in approval. Surprise etching his scales, Highness, venturing beyond ceremony. Bold. Marcus stood silent at her flank, but she felt his quiet affirmation, their partnership shifting from ink on scrolls to shared vigilance. What began as a ceremonial union tightened into practical partnership under threats they both must face. A plasma bolt seared past Lyri's frill, scorching the hovercraft's canopy as the convoy lurched into evasive spirals. Shouts erupted from the guards, filled necks flaring in panic, while the lead vehicle exploded in a bloom of green fire ahead. Sniper nest, high ground left, barked Captain Voran, his Vin-like arms whipping to ready his rifle. But Lyri's gaze locked on Marcus beside her, the human diplomat unmoved, his eyes already scanning the ridge through the cracked viewport. Marcus didn't hesitate. He slapped the emergency hatch release, the door hissing open to whipping winds, and vaulted out with fluid precision, rolling into a low crouch behind a supply crate. Leary's heart pounded. This was no ceremonial envoy, no soft-skinned Terran meant for banquets. He moved like liquid shadow, drawing a compact pulse pistol from his diplomatic satchel. Non-lethal rounds, she noted absently, while signaling the nearest guards with sharp universal gestures. Fan out, suppress, flank. The snipers fired again, bolts chewing the earth near Marcus's boots. He didn't flinch, didn't waste breath on curses. Instead, he multitasked seamlessly, firing pinpoint bursts to pin one shooter while tossing a microdrone from his belt. The device hummed skyward, feeding targeting data to his wrist display. Lyra watched, transfixed, as he darted forward, weaving through crossfire with endurance that defied the thin border air, his breath steady where Viridians would already gasp. A second sniper popped up. Marcus anticipated, rolling under the bolt and snapping off shots that dropped the attacker limp, webbed in restraint foam. By the time the third sniper bolted for cover, Marcus had closed the gap, scaling the ridge with improvised handholds, roots, rocks, sheer will. He disarmed the last with a precise nerve strike, knee to thigh, elbow to frill base, binding them before they hit ground. The convoy's guards arrived panting, rifles trained, staring at the neatly subdued team. 3 snipers, alive, intel intact. Captain Voran's crest wilted in shock. How? Terrans aren't built for this. You took that ridge alone. Marcus holstered his weapon, wiping dust from his uniform with a shrug. Just training and luck, Captain. Let's secure the site. His voice stayed even, deferential, no boast, just fact. Leary felt a strange heat coil in her core fronds. This man, her arranged spouse, had dismantled a kill team like it was drill practice. Regroup on me! Leary's command cut the stunned silence, her royal frill unfurling fully for the first time that day, authority ringing clear. The convoy reformed under her direction, medics hauling wounded, analysts sweeping the sniper's gear, insignia marking them as shadow-packed rebels. Reroute to secondary depot. No more blind runs. She turned to Marcus as the hovercrafts lifted. You saved us. Why non-lethal? Dead enemies tell no tales, Highness, and restraint buys alliances. His gray eyes met hers steadily. No arrogance, just quiet competence. She nodded, resolve hardening. From now on, I accompany all inspections. The air doesn't hide while shadows strike. That evening, in the Royal Pavilion's dim glow, Marcus laid out training mats under bioluminescent vines. Leary arrived unannounced, shedding her ceremonial robes for fitted sparring garb. Her flaw, sheltered arrogance. Teach me, she said flatly. Not theory, what you did today. He inclined his head, humble as ever. Basics first, hand to hand. Awareness, presence. Viridian physiology favors reach, will adapt. Sessions began at dawn's edge, Marcus demonstrating stances with patient precision, balance over power, reading tells in frill twitches and vine flecks. Leary mirrored, her live form quicker than expected, diplomat's theory fusing with his grounded drills. He multitasked effortlessly, correcting her grip while explaining battlefield scans, his human endurance shining as hours blurred without fatigue. She pushed harder, drawn by his calm focus, the way he anticipated her doubts without patronizing. By week's end, whispers reached court. Minister Hala, her tendrils coiled tight with faction ambition, led the petition in the crystal-domed council hall. This Terran consort neutralized assassins. Impressive, perhaps, but unvetted. His records are diplomatic fog. Petition. Full background review. Duties limited to ceremony. Murmurs rippled. Hala's allies nodded. Eyes on Leary's throne, probing for weakness in the young heir. Leary's frill held steady, strategy theory fueling her retort. He acts for the Empire. Review if you must, but security demands action, not delay. Marcus stood silent at her side, composed, letting her lead, a subtle deference that steadied her. Deeper in the training grounds, progress crystallized. During a staged drill, Leary faced veteran guard Korath, a hulking wall of bark armor and scars. Officers watched from the sidelines, skeptical. Marcus nodded go. She dropped into the defensive stance he'd drilled, feet rooted like ancient groves, arms weaving in human-taught arcs. Korath lunged, vine whips cracking. She sidestepped using his momentum, frill flaring to distract. A twist. A precise disarm. His rifle clattered free, her elbow pinning his throat. The yard fell silent. Korath rumbled approval, rubbing his frill. Airfights like storm route now. Officers' crests perked, respect dawning. Even Hulla's spies in the ranks exchanged glances. Leary exhaled, pulse racing, not from effort, but triumph. Marcus's nod was brief. Proud without show. Progress, he said simply. In that moment, her attraction flickered warmer, from duty-bound alliance to something personal, his humility mirroring her growth. She pulled him aside after, voice low. Keep this confidential, no court spectacle. But officially, Leary activated her compad, assigning him to the Royal Household Security roster with a flourish. You're central now, protection unified under one lead. Marcus accepted the tablet, his hand brushing hers, electric, unintended. As you command, Princess, together we hold. What began as ceremonial tightened further, forged in fire and drills, as shadows deepened beyond the borders. Leary's fingers tightened on the edge of the balcony rail as the festival's holographic fireworks sputtered into darkness. Below, in the palace plaza teeming with thousands of revelers, screams pierced the night. Sharp, uncoordinated panic, as perimeter shields flickered offline and a cascade of red failure alerts racing across her wrist display. Communication severed, she muttered, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Captains, report. Static hissed back from her earpiece. Nothing. The sabotage was surgical, outer defenses crippled, inner comms jammed, leaving the palace a glittering island adrift in vulnerability. Leary's mind raced through the drills Marcus had hammered into her. Layered redundancies, fallback protocols. She slammed her palm on the emergency beacon, activating manual runners. Evacuate civilians to the undercrypts. Priority 1, move. Guards snapped to action around her, but doubt flickered in their scaled faces. She ignored it, barking orders to the nearest squad. Fan out, secure the artisan quarter first. No gaps. Her heart pounded, but the motions felt ingrained now, not theoretical like her court tutor's lectures. From the shadows of the eastern wing, Marcus emerged like a specter, his human frame unhurried amid the chaos. He didn't shout. He gestured sharply to a cluster of off-duty enforcers, pulling them into a tight huddle. Leary watched, transfixed, as he sketched a rapid grid on his portable slate, perimeter breach points, wind patterns for scent trails, optimal pincer routes. The men nodded, faces paling at the precision, and melted into the night without a word. Minutes later, muffled shouts echoed from the outer walls. Marcus reappeared, dragging a bound infiltrator by the collar, a wiry figure in festival garb, reeking of off-world chemtracers. Blood streaked the human's knuckles, but his breath came even, eyes scanning horizons as if this were routine. One down, he said simply, shoving the saboteur toward Leary's guards. He's tagged with a relay beacon. Traces lead to the eastern spires, likely 3 more cells. The captain gaped, mandibles clicking in shock. How did you... The grids were down. Marcus shrugged, wiping his hands. Old habit, eyes and ears. He stepped back, deferring to the chain of command without fanfare, as if capturing a coup operative mid-festival was just another diplomatic courtesy. Leary's pulse thrummed with something fiercer than adrenaline. Admiration, sharp and unwelcome. She shoved it down. Interrogate him. Full spectrum. Runners, relay to field units. Converge on spires, suppress fire only. Her voice carried, cutting through the din, and for the first time the guards moved without hesitation. As the plaza cleared, civilians herded into reinforced shelters she'd mapped weeks ago under Marcus's tutelage. Leary patched into the auxiliary command node. It held, barely. Unit Theta, hold the aqueduct flank. Delta, rotate sentries clockwise, Marcus's pincer variant. The responses crackled affirmative, her orders flowing like the maneuvers they'd practiced until her limbs ached. No more sheltered princess reciting theory. This was command, raw and real. By dawn, the perimeter hummed back online. Infiltrators routed, festival remnants smoldering under cleanup crews. Leary exhaled, shoulders slumping as she surveyed the damage from the command dais. Marcus stood nearby, coordinating repair teams with that effortless multitasking, directing welders while cross-referencing saboteur intel on 2 slates. Viridians twice his bulk flagged after the night's grind, but he showed no strain, just quiet efficiency. Then the summons hit. An emergency succession hearing called by Lord Virak's faction in the Grand Chamber. Whispers slithered through the court, rumors of Marcus's barbarian past, human kill squads, alliance poisons. Her parents' advisors clustered defensively, faces ashen, while Varak's allies bayed for audits. Leary stormed the chamber doors mid-debate, robes askew, guards flanking her. The assembly hushed. Hundreds of nobles, their frills quivering in outrage. "This is no time for parlor games," she snapped, striding to the central podium. "The saboteurs breached our heart during festival sacred to all. I demand a formal probe into sponsors. Varak's eastern contacts first." Gasps rippled. Her father, Emperor Thalor, leaned forward, eyes wide. "Leary, the human rumors tie him to. Marcus Vale preserved this palace," she cut in, voice ringing. "He orchestrated the counter without comms, captured the lead infiltrator, saved hundreds. I vouch for him, personally." Heat flushed her scales, risking her standing for an off-worlder spouse, arranged or not, bordered on folly. But his actions tonight burned away the ceremonial veil. Varak sneered, but murmurs shifted, doubt seeding respect. Marcus, summoned as witness, stood silent at her side, gaze steady on her, not the crowd. No boasts, just a faint nod of thanks that twisted something warm in her chest. The hearing adjourned under pressure for investigation, but threats lingered. Leary wasted no time. In the training yards under a bruised sky, she assembled the palace guard, skeptical officers included. "Form phalanxes. We're drilling the veil pivot." Marcus's maneuver. Grumbles rose. Viridians favored rigid honor lines, not this fluid human weave. She demonstrated first, weaving through mock foes with blade and shield, her form sharper from endless sessions. Pivot left, seal the breach, rotate reserves inward. Guards stumbled initially, their bulk unaccustomed to the adaptability, but Leary corrected with precision, voice patient yet firm. Marcus observed from the sidelines, offering terse tweaks when crests aligned. By midday the line snapped crisp, officers sweating. Frills flared in exertion but executing flawlessly. Captain Elar, once dismissive, saluted her crisply. "Highness, it holds, even against warlord drones." Leary met his gaze, chest swelling not with arrogance but earned pride. "It's not mine alone. Vale taught it. Humans see patterns we miss." Elar's mandibles stilled, then dipped in concession. Whispers spread. The air commanded, the human innovated, together unbreakable. As shadows lengthened, Marcus approached, handing her a canteen. Their fingers brushed, accidental, electric. "You led well tonight," he said softly, voice carrying that human timbre, warm without presumption. She held his eyes longer than protocol allowed. "We both did." What began as ceremonial had forged into alliance, steel-tempered. But as runners reported stirrings in the spires, conspiracy tendrils uncoiling, she gripped her blade tighter. The apprentice in command would not yield. When palace systems failed anew that eve, a subtle pulse jammer from within the guard barracks, Leary was ready. She traced the anomaly herself, pattern recognition from Marcus's lessons, bursting into the dim hall to collar her own lieutenant, bribe-tainted and frozen mid-sabotage. "Traitor," she hissed, binding him as enforcers swarmed. The conspiracy cracked, from the inside out, her vigilance the blade that severed it. Marcus arrived seconds later, approval in his quiet smile. The palace breathed easier, but borders darkened further. Warlords massing, factions scheming. Leary stood taller, spouse at her side, no longer sheltered but leader. Explosions rocked the palace foundations, the thunderous booms vibrating through Leary's boots as she gripped the command dais. Hollow screens flickered to life around her, red alerts screaming from the capital's outer walls and distant frontier forts. Warlord dropships breaching atmospheres, traitor factions unleashing plasma barrages from within. "Contingency Alpha," she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos like a vibroblade. "Palace Guard to defensive perimeters. Secure the succession vault now." Guards snapped to motion, their iridescent scales flushing with urgency under the emergency lights. Leary's heart hammered, but the training Marcus had drilled into her held, breathe, assess, act. No time for the sheltered princess she'd been. Her parents were off-world, negotiating alliances. The throne chamber was hers to hold. Marcus was already at the tactical nexus, fingers flying across the interface, his human frame steady amid the flashing warnings. "Multi-pronged," he said calmly, eyes narrowing on the projections. "Warlords hitting forts Gamma and Delta. Overwhelming numbers. Capital gates breached at 3 points. I'll coordinate the outer defenses. He tapped a override code, his deferential envoy mask cracking as he patched into Imperial comms. All units, this is Vale. Stand by for direct orders. Frontier legions reroute to intercept vectors. Palace reserves form kill zones of the breaches. Leary stared. He'd never used that tone, that authority. Guards hesitated, glancing her way, but she nodded sharply. You heard him. Execute. As Marcus barked precise maneuvers, flanking patterns no Viridian tactician had voiced so fluidly, she activated the palace contingency protocols. Succession safeguards locked in, gene-coded vaults sealed her claim, broadcasts primed for her voice. But holding the palace wouldn't win this. The coup's tendrils reached too deep. Alarms wailed anew. Traitors inside the eastern wing. Plasma fire echoing closer. Leary with me, Marcus said, slinging a pulse rifle from the rack and tossing her one. His eyes met hers, fierce and unyielding. Counter, Sally. We hit them at the atrium choke point. She chambered around. The weapons hummed familiar from their hidden sparring sessions. Lead on. They burst from the command center, palace guards falling in behind. 20 strong, scales rippling in sync. Corridors blurred as they sprinted. Marcus multitasking feeds on his wrist hollow, adjusting artillery from Fort's 3 systems out while calling air support patterns. Viridians faltered at such pace. He'd run drills for hours without tiring, explaining it as human baseline. Now it saved them. Traitors swarmed the atrium, 50 armored usurpers backed by warlord drones humming overhead. Bolts scorched the air as Lyrie dove behind a pillar, returning fire with trained precision. Marcus rolled forward, rifle barking in controlled bursts, dropping 2 drones mid-air. Pattern recognition. Their advance is rote. Flank left, Leary. Guards, suppressive on the right. She adapted instantly, their sparring forms clicking into lethal rhythm. A traitor lunged. She parried with her blade, Marcus covering her blind side with a shot that vaporized his weapon. Together they carved through. Her ceremonial grace honed sharp by his relentless lessons, his endurance turning the tide as traitors flagged. One warlord enforcer, twice her size, charged. Marcus multitasked a grenade toss while shielding her, his free hand steadying her aim for the kill shot. The atrium fell in minutes, bodies steaming on the marble. Cheers erupted from her guards, eyes wide on Marcus, a human outlasting them, improvising traps from debris that shredded the next drone wave. How? One guard muttered, vents flaring and all. Marcus just reloaded, humble as ever. Teamwork. Breathing hard, Leary keyed her calm. Palace secure. Status, Marcus? Frontiers holding, barely. He pulled her aside amid the settling dust, voice low. Leary, no more cover. I'm not just your attaché. Elite Commander, Terran Special Forces. Embedded pre-marriage to guard you, test your mettle under fire. Alliance fragility demanded it. Your Empire's assassins were closing in. Hiding let me watch your growth. Her vents cycled shock, then understanding. The deference, the drills, it fit. No arrogance, just duty. You could have told me. Would have undermined the test. You passed, beyond expectations. Pride flickered in his eyes. Human warmth cutting the adrenaline. Drones whirred overhead. Live palace cams broadcasting their stand to the Empire. Hollow feeds captured it all. The princess sallying forth, human spouse at her side, turning the tide. Public channels lit up. Citizens' doubts shattering as rival factions' propaganda crumbled. The air fights, scrolled the nets. Her parents' advisors patched in. Voices terse. Acceptable. Princess. Integrate the human. He's proven. Final waves crashed the throne chamber doors. Marcus and Leary led the charge, guards weaving human creativity with Viridian discipline. Improvised barricades funneled enemies into crossfire. Marcus's resilience shone. Wounded in the shoulder, he fought on, directing without pause while Leary sealed the kill with a diplomatic feint that drew fire. Her blade ended him, blood slicking the throne dais. Silence fell, victory humming in the air. Leary stepped forward, cameras whirring, Marcus at her flank. Empire-wide, billions watched. Viridians, she declared, voice steady. Today we repel shadows, but strength is shared. Marcus Vale, my spouse, commander proven in blood, I pledge partnership. Equal command, from this throne forward. He inclined his head, rifle lowered. Honored to stand with you. The chamber erupted. Guards chanting, feeds exploding with support, rivals folded, warlords retreating as opinion locked. Leary turned to him, pulse racing not from battle. In the throne's glow she cupped his face, human skin warm under her scaled palm, and pulled him into their first kiss. Soft, fierce, a seal before witnesses. His arms encircled her, steady as ever. Breaking apart, she faced the hollow assembly. Parents materializing, advisors bowing. Reforms now. Marcus integrates fully, co-leader in Imperial Command. Terran alliances consolidate under our banner. We rule together, stronger. Marcus's quiet smile returned. Approval deep, borders secured, factions quelled. Her arc complete, from sheltered heir to battle-forged ruler. She glanced at him, gratitude blooming into more. Born to rule, yes, but he'd taught her to lead.